Hey creeps, it's Cameron again, and welcome back to my channel where I talk about books, movies, writing, and all things spooky. And on this episode of Library Macabre, I have a very late September book haul. So in the month of September, I didn't really go shopping for very many books. I was so busy working on the release of my own book that it kind of zapped all my energy, and I didn't really have the desire to go book hunting, which doesn't happen often. But I mean, with how many books I usually buy, I needed a break from book buying. But I still did manage to get about 30 books in the month of September. Most of those were given to me, others were bought from a thrift store, and then I also have a couple of magazines. So I'm going to start with the books that I got for review. Now, I have been closed for reviews. I've mentioned this in the past couple of book hauls. I really have so much to read for review right now that I've not really been taking any books for review. But there are a couple of new releases here where the authors were like, hey, I know you're really stocked up on books right now, you can just get to them whenever you have time, and they sent them anyway, which was very nice of them. So the first one I have here is Camp Slaughter, which is by Sergio Gomez. So he sent along a nice paperback copy of that one. This is kind of a slasher story, except instead of a slasher killer, you have cannibals, so that looks like a lot of fun. I actually have his other book called The Toymaker, which is at the top of my TBR right now. I think I have 2 or 3 more books to read, and then I'll be getting to that book. And I'm very excited to read about that. It's kind of like It by Stephen King, except instead of a clown, you have a ventriloquist dummy. So that sounds like a lot of fun. Completely different from this one. And then all the way from the UK, we have The Deal Maker, which is by Lou Yardley. And I have another one of her books that I need to read for review as well. It is called Rise of the Carnivores, I believe, and it's about dinosaurs. But this one is about a demon who will grant your greatest desire at a price, of course. And on the back here it says, if demons, gore, and hellish creatures are your thing, dive right in. So that sounds like fun. And then also, this one came from Quirk, and I totally forgot that I had this one coming, so it was a nice surprise. They contacted me about this over the summer, or maybe even back in the springtime, and asked me if I'd like a review copy, and then it showed up in September. So that is How to Survive a Horror Movie. This is by Seth Grahame-Smith. Really looking forward to reading this. It's just like one of those little coffee table books, just kind of going over stats and stuff about horror films. It just looks like a nice, good time. And then I have a few mass market horrors right here. The first one is called Hellborn, and this is by Gary Brandner. This was sent to me by my friend Eric, who runs Capricorn Literary. He sent along a t-shirt of his new reprint version of Blood Sisters by John Russo. The t-shirt had the new cover art for that edition of the book, and along with the shirt, he included this book right here. So very cool. I didn't own this one. This is by the author of The Howling, of course. And then I did stop in a used bookstore and didn't find a whole lot, but I did find a really nice copy of This Dark Paradise, which is by Wendy Howley. And this has the cool step back artwork right there. It says it's in the tradition of Anne Rice, but it looks a little bit more like a V.C. Andrews book to me. But this was printed by Diamond in the 90s. And then I stopped at a Goodwill and I found some mass market horrors. First one here is Hellcat, which is by Amanda Kingsley. It's a leisure book. And then I also got Prey. This one is not in the best of shape. It's got like this plastic cover over it, and it's definitely been read quite a few times. But I thought it would be a good reading copy. The same is for the next 2 books that I found there. This one is The House Next Door, which is by Anne Rivers Siddons, I think. Again, not in great shape, but this is a very rare book. I have not seen it around ever, so I thought I needed to pick it up. I've heard great things about this. I hear it's actually kind of a classic haunted house book, so I need to read this one soon. And then I also found a copy of Family Reunion by Nicholas Sabazin. And then also at that same Goodwill, I found a copy of Halloween Party, which is by Wendy Corsi Staub. Now this is a young adult 90s horror book that was originally published by Z-Fave. And Z-Fave was an imprint of Kensington Publishing, who published Zebra books and Pinnacle, and that was kind of their young adult line. This is a second printing, so it is published by Pinnacle, which was their other imprint. But this is a very rare book. I've never seen this anywhere. It's very expensive online, but they had it there for like 79 cents. It's in great shape. It's like mint condition. I wanted to read this during October, but I didn't get around to it, so I'll have to wait till next year. But I'm glad to finally have a copy of that. And then my stepmom's sister was getting rid of a bunch of books, and she drove by with a truck full of books and asked me if I wanted any of them. So I dug through and I found a few. Most of them were like nonfiction, like mechanical books, things about engineering, which I'm not really interested in. But these ones stood out to me, so I got a nice little stack here. The first one I picked up was Satan's Harvest. So this is based off of one of those Warren paranormal cases, and I've never really heard about this particular case, so I'm excited to read about it. And then she also gave me a hardcover copy of The Abyss by G.R. Cunningham. Unfortunately, it is missing the dust jacket, but this is a vintage horror novel that I've heard quite a bit about, and the paperback cover is amazing for this, so I'd like to track that down at some point too. But there is a hardcover copy of The Abyss. Here is a paperback copy of The Pearl by John Steinbeck. And then this is a hardcover set of Larned's History of the World. It's a 5-volume set. Not really what I typically read, but I just thought these books were beautiful. I love the marbled covers there. It looks like this was published in 1914, so they're pretty old, but I just thought they would look really cool on a shelf. And then the last book that I got from my stepmom's sister is The History of Atlantis. Again, no dust jacket, but I love books like this. I just find them very interesting. So this is a nice older copy. And diving back into some horror books, I have Mass Hysteria, which is by Michael Patrick Hicks. I've been wanting to read some of this guy's books for a while now. This one was on sale on Amazon for like $5 or $6. It was really cheap, so I picked up a copy of that. I also found a UK edition of October by Stephen Gallagher. This was on eBay for like $5 with free shipping. It was super cheap. It's in great shape. It's like brand new. It even has the Mylar dust jacket cover to protect it. I love this cover. That is just so cool. I had to pick it up, especially for the price. And then I also found a first edition hardcover copy of The Other by Thomas Tryon. This was on eBay for like $20. Looks brand new. It's in great shape. That included shipping as well, so it was a very cheap first edition. So I'm glad to have a first edition of this classic book. I've never read it, but I've been wanting to for a while. I also really need to get to Harvest Home. I hear a lot of great things about that book, so I need to dig into some Tryon for sure. I also found a first edition hardcover copy of The Selkie, and this is by Charles Sheffield and David Bischoff. I just thought this looked really cool, and I like books that involve mermaids and selkies, especially if they are evil, which is the way they should be, honestly. So I'm excited to see what this one's all about. I also picked up a few middle grade and young adult books. This one, can't remember where I got this. It was like $1 from some thrift store. It's A Nightmare's Dozen. I've always heard a lot of good things about this one. I hear it's a really good short story collection / anthology, so I hope to read that maybe next year for Halloween. It looks very spooky. I also set up a booth at the book fair in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and I was just selling some extra books that I didn't really want anymore. And afterwards I decided to walk around and see if there were any books from the other vendors that I would like to buy. And there really weren't. I didn't really find anything at all except for these. So we have 2 Goosebumps address books, and this one's a journal. So this one has The Haunted Mask, and this one has A Shocker on Shock Street. These were like $0.25 each, and that's all I found at the whole entire book fair. So that was surprising. But at least I made some money. I didn't spend it all on other books, so that's good. I also picked up a hardcover copy of Closed for the Season by Mary Downing Hahn. She's the one who wrote Wait Till Helen Comes, which is a really good middle grade ghost story. I haven't read any of her other books, so I thought this one looked intriguing. It was like $1 for the hardcover, so it was a nice bargain. And then I believe at the same thrift store, I found a copy of Babysitter's Club, number 64. This is Don's Family Feud. I've been picking up these whenever I can find them for cheap. And they really don't pop up too often anymore, but I've been in a 90s mood and I would like to read some of these books at some point. And same goes for the Sweet Valley books. I've been picking up these whenever I find them for cheap. These were like $1 at another thrift store. So we have Sweet Valley Twins, Won't Someone Help Anna. This is number 69 in the series. And then we have number 101, which is called Twins in Love. When it comes to newer young adult books, I don't really buy them anymore. I don't really like to read them anymore. I find most of them very cheesy. But I did have to pick up this one because I read Carry On by Rainbow Rowell years ago when it first came out and loved it. It was like one of my favorite books of that year. So here's the sequel. It is called Wayward Son. I don't like the cover of this book. I think it's kind of tacky looking, honestly. But I'm really excited to read it because I did love the first book so much, and I'm excited to see what she does with a sequel. I'm hoping she doesn't ruin it, but I've never read a Rainbow Rowell book that I didn't like. I've read most of her books, and each of them have been really good, so I have high hopes for this one. And then I did find one more young adult book at the Dollar Tree. Of course, all of their books are $1 each, so when I saw this hardcover copy, I had to get it. This is The Becoming of Noah Shaw by Michelle Hodkin. Now this is a spin-off series of her Mara Dyer series. The first book is The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer, and I've always wanted to read that, but I've never gotten around to it, though I do have it sitting on my shelf over there. I need to get to it at some point. And when I heard about the spin-off series told from the male's perspective, I was kind of like, okay, whatever. But then I read the first page and it made me a little more interested. It says, trigger warning for suicide, homicide, assault with a deadly weapon, assault with a deadly mind, harm to others, harm to self, disordered eating, disordered thinking, disordered feeling, disordered being, body shaming, victim shaming, shaming of every kind, dark humor, ill humor, shitty humor, maiming, miming, death of teenagers, death of adults, death of authority figures, death of inconsequential red shirts, also sex. If you need a trigger warning for that, you're reading the wrong book. I was like applauding that. So I thought that was really cool, and I was like, all right, yeah. This renewed my interest in reading the original series, and now I am interested in picking up the spinoff. And lastly, I have a few horror magazines. Of course, I have the new issue of Fangoria. This is issue number 5 with Creepshow on the cover. This is from the new Shudder TV series. I have started watching this, and it's okay. I hear it gets better, so I am going to continue on with it. But there's my new issue of Fango. Kind of a similar magazine. We have Horror Hound, issue number 78. When I saw The Creature from the Black Lagoon on the cover, I had to get it. There is a very, very nice, long article all about collecting Creature from the Black Lagoon memorabilia. And this spread goes on for pages. So very cool. I've actually already read that whole thing, and there's some really cool information in there, and it makes me want to collect Creature from the Black Lagoon stuff. But that would be very expensive. And lastly, we have issue number 20 of The Creeps, which is a throwback to the old Warren comics of yesteryear. So these are in black and white, just like the original magazines. They're very Tales from the Crypt-ish. I don't really like the style of the cover. I think it's very Photoshop looking, and it's a lot different from their other covers that they've been doing. I don't know, it kind of has a those 90s computer graphics kind of look to it. So I'm not a big fan. I hope they go back to the hand-drawn covers. But I am excited to dig into this and see what stories are included. Okay, so that is my September book haul, and I will be back pretty shortly with my October book haul. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Later, creeps. Hey creeps, thank you again for visiting my channel and for subscribing. If you would like to see more, I am on Twitter and Instagram at BookMovieGuy. I am also the co-creator of the Library Macabre Books Facebook page. Also, I am a horror author, so if you would like to read any of my work or check out any of the pages that I mentioned, I will leave the links down below in the graveyard. And lastly, I am on Patreon, so I wanted to use this time to extend a very warm thank you to all of these awesome creeps over here. Those are all of my Patreon supporters, and I wanted to say thank you so much, guys, and stay spooky.